You've been lied to about conversation. They tell you to be yourself, to share openly, to show vulnerability. They promise that authenticity and genuine connection will make you magnetic, compelling, unforgettable. But here's the truth. Authentic people are predictable. Predictable people are boring. And boring people are forgotten the moment they leave the room. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something that modern social coaches refuse to acknowledge, that true conversational power comes not from revelation, but from concealment. Not from transparency, but from strategic opacity. The prince who reveals everything controls nothing. The person who says exactly what they think becomes a tool in someone else's hands. While everyone else is following feel-good advice about being authentic, you're about to learn the dark art of conversational dominance. These aren't rules for making friends. These are rules for becoming unforgettable. For wielding influence. For ensuring that every conversation becomes a theater where you are simultaneously the director and the most compelling character on stage. The people around you won't understand why they can't stop thinking about what you said. They won't realize why they find themselves seeking your approval, your attention, your next word. They'll just know that talking to you feels different, more intense, more consequential, more alive than their usual mundane exchanges. People say, be honest about what you think. Speak your truth. Authentic communication builds trust. But here's what Machiavelli would say. Complete honesty is complete vulnerability. When you lay all your cards on the table, you give others the power to predict, manipulate, and ultimately dismiss you. The danger. When you express your full opinion immediately, you accomplish three things, all of them disastrous for your conversational power. First, you eliminate mystery. Once people know exactly where you stand, the intellectual tension dies. Second, you provide ammunition for your opponents. Every complete opinion contains attack vectors that skilled conversationalists will exploit. Third, you signal that your thoughts are finished, complete, requiring no further development, and therefore no further attention. Historical backing. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." He understood that the space between appearance and reality is where power lives. In conversation, this translates to the space between what you hint at and what you fully reveal. Practical application. Instead of saying, "I think remote work is destroying company culture," you say, "There's something about remote work that most people aren't seeing yet." Instead of declaring, "I hate networking events," you pause and say, "Networking events. They reveal something interesting about human nature." Notice the difference? The first statements are endpoints. The second are invitations. They create curiosity, demand follow-up questions, position you as someone with hidden knowledge. The stakes. Reveal your complete opinion, and you become a known quantity. People file you away mentally and move on, but hint at depths they haven't explored, and you become a puzzle they need to solve. The person who can be fully understood in one conversation will never be sought out for a second. People say, "Express your feelings. Let people know what affects you. Emotional openness creates connection." But here's what Machiavelli would say. Your emotional triggers are the strings by which others will pull you. Show them your buttons, and you hand over the remote control to your reactions. The danger. Every time you react emotionally, every time you show what angers, excites, or destabilizes you, you give other people a roadmap for controlling the conversation. They learn exactly what topics will make you defensive, what subjects will make you passionate, what words will knock you off balance. You transform from a conversational strategist into a predictable responder. Historical backing. Machiavelli observed that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But in conversation, It's better to be mysterious than reactive. The prince who shows his anger shows his weakness. The conversationalist who displays their triggers becomes a puppet in someone else's show. Practical application. When someone brings up a topic that normally makes you defensive, you don't bristle or argue. You pause, smile slightly, and say, "That's an interesting way to see it." When they attack something you care about, you don't rush to defend it. You say, "Tell me more about why you think that," and watch them reveal their own motivations while you remain unreadable. Your emotional triggers become your secret intelligence network. You feel everything, but you reveal nothing until you decide the strategic moment has arrived. The stakes. Show your triggers, and every conversation becomes about managing your reactions instead of directing the interaction. But master your emotional presentation, and you control not just your own responses, but the emotional temperature of everyone around you. People say, share your goals, be transparent about what you want. People respect honesty about ambition. But here's what Machiavelli would say. Announced ambitions become everyone else's targets. The moment you declare your destination, others can predict your path and position themselves to block it. The danger. When you tell people exactly what you want, you accomplish several things that work against you. You give competitors advance warning of your moves. You allow others to position themselves as gatekeepers to your success. You transform your private motivation into public property that everyone feels entitled to judge, critique, or undermine. Historical backing. Machiavelli knew that the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. Your true ambitions are the traps. If everyone can see them coming, they can be easily avoided or countered. But ambitions kept strategically unclear become impossible to defend against. Practical application. Instead of saying, "I want to start my own company," you say, "I'm exploring some interesting opportunities in the industry." Instead of, "I'm trying to get promoted to manager," you mention, "I've been thinking about different ways to have more impact." The key is substituting specific ambitions with directional intrigue. You're not hiding that you want to grow, you're concealing the exact nature and timeline of that growth. The stakes. Declare your ambitions openly, and you invite every conversation to become a negotiation about whether you deserve them. But keep your true goals strategically vague, and people have to guess at your capabilities, your timeline, your ultimate destination, which makes you infinitely more compelling than someone whose next move is obvious. People say, share what you know, be helpful, show your expertise to build credibility. But here's what Machiavelli would say. Knowledge fully revealed is power completely transferred. The advisor who tells the prince everything becomes unnecessary the moment the lesson is complete. The danger. When you share everything you know about a topic, you make yourself disposable. People extract your value and move on. Worse, you position yourself as a resource rather than an authority, someone to be consulted and dismissed rather than someone to be courted and retained. Historical backing. Machiavelli understood that information is currency, and like all currency, it loses value when spent carelessly. He wrote about the importance of being both the fox and the lion, clever enough to avoid traps, strong enough to defend against wolves. In conversation, this means being knowledgeable enough to demonstrate your value, but strategic enough to never reveal its full extent. Practical application. When someone asks for your expertise, you don't download everything you know. You share one compelling insight, then pause. There's another factor most people don't consider, you say, but you don't elaborate unless they ask the right questions. You make them work for each piece of knowledge, turning every conversation into an exchange rather than a lecture. The stakes. Expose all your knowledge, and the conversation ends with your usefulness, but reveal your expertise strategically, in carefully measured doses, and people will keep coming back for more because they can sense there are depths they haven't yet explored. People say, ask for help. Be vulnerable about your needs. People like to feel useful. But here's what Machiavelli would say. Exposed needs become exploitable weaknesses. The moment you show what you require from others, you give them the power to withhold it, or to name their price for providing it. The danger. When you reveal what you need, you shift the power dynamic in every conversation. You move from a position of offering value to a position of requiring assistance. People unconsciously recategorize you from someone they should impress to someone who should be grateful for their attention. Historical backing. Machiavelli observed that dependency breeds contempt. The prince who needs his advisors more than they need him will soon find himself taking their orders rather than giving them. In conversation, this translates directly. The person who obviously needs something will always be at a disadvantage to the person who appears self-sufficient. Practical application. Instead of saying, I really need advice on this situation, you say, I'm curious about your perspective on something. Instead of, can you introduce me to your contact? You create a scenario where the introduction benefits them as much as you. I met someone who might be perfect for your project. Would you be interested in meeting them? The stakes. Show what you need, and every conversation becomes about whether others are willing to help you. But appear self-sufficient while creating mutual value, and every conversation becomes about how others can position themselves to benefit from your capabilities. People say, be clear about your schedule. Let people know your availability. Transparency about timing builds trust. But here's what Machiavelli would say. Revealed timelines become everyone else's weapon against your urgency. The moment others know when you need something, they know exactly how much power they have over you. The danger. When you tell people your real timeline, when you need that job, when you have to make that decision, when your opportunity expires, you hand them the ability to manipulate your urgency. They can delay, accelerate, or create artificial scarcity based on your revealed constraints. Historical backing. Machiavelli knew that timing was everything in politics and war, but he also knew that revealed timing was a vulnerability. The general who announces when he must attack gives his enemies the power to choose the terms of engagement. Practical application. When someone asks when you need an answer, you don't give them your real deadline. I'm exploring a few different options. You say, so I'm not in a huge rush, but I also don't want to leave it hanging forever. When they ask about your availability, you suggest a time frame that gives you more flexibility than you actually have. The stakes. Reveal your real timeline, and others control the pace of your progress. But keep your timing strategically unclear, and you maintain the power to accelerate or decelerate based on your strategic needs rather than their convenience. Now you understand what not to reveal. But knowing what to hide is only half the battle. The other half is understanding what to do with the space you've created. The mystery, the uncertainty, the compelling gaps in what people know about you. This is where silence becomes your greatest weapon. Not awkward silence, but strategic silence. The pause that makes people lean in. The moment of consideration that suggests depths they haven't reached. The calculated hesitation that makes your next words carry more weight. Most people fear silence in conversation. They rush to fill every gap, to explain every pause, to make sure there's never a moment of uncertainty. But you're going to do the opposite. You're going to let strategic silences do the work that words cannot accomplish. Because here's what silence does that talking cannot. It forces other people to project their own assumptions, fears, and desires onto you. It makes them work to understand you. It creates a space where their imagination can make you more interesting than your actual words ever could. Reframe your new identity. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room yet. You don't have to be the most successful, the most connected, or the most accomplished. But you do have to be the most strategically mysterious person they've encountered. You have to master the art of suggestion without declaration, depth without complete revelation, engagement without full exposure. This isn't about being withdrawn or antisocial. This is about being selectively engaging in a way that maximizes your conversational impact. Practical scenarios. When someone asks what you do for work, instead of launching into your job description, you pause and say, "I solve problems that most people don't realize are problems yet." Then you wait for them to ask for more. When someone wants to know your opinion on a controversial topic, you don't pick a side immediately. You say, "There's something both sides are missing," and let them wonder what you see that they don't. When someone asks about your weekend plans, you don't recite your schedule. You mention one intriguing element. "I'm meeting someone who has an interesting theory about why most people hate their jobs." Now they're curious about both the person and the theory. The deeper game. This isn't about being evasive for the sake of being difficult. This is about understanding that conversational power comes from creating intellectual and emotional investment. When people have to work to understand you, they become psychologically invested in the outcome of that work. You're not trying to be mysterious in an annoying way. You're trying to be strategically engaging in a way that makes every conversation feel like it has stakes, consequences, potential for unexpected revelation. Redefine power. Power in conversation doesn't always look like dominating the discussion or talking the most. Sometimes it's being the person whose single comment changes the entire direction of the group's thinking. The most powerful person in the room is often not the one giving the longest speeches, but the one whose brief observations carry the most weight, because everyone has learned that when they speak, it's worth listening. Strategic positioning. You win conversational power not by fighting for attention, but by making attention naturally flow toward you. Not by demanding to be heard, but by making people want to hear from you. This happens when you consistently demonstrate that your perspective offers something others haven't considered. When your questions reveal assumptions people didn't know they were making. When your insights connect dots that seemed unrelated until you pointed out the pattern. Psychological impact. When you follow these rules consistently, you create a specific climate around your conversations. People start to prepare differently when they know they'll be talking with you. They think more carefully about what they want to ask you. They pay closer attention to your reactions because they've learned that your responses aren't automatic or predictable. This makes you simultaneously intriguing and slightly intimidating, not because you're aggressive or hostile, but because you clearly operate by different rules than everyone else. You've opted out of the standard social contract of complete transparency, and that makes you genuinely unpredictable in a world where most people are exhaustingly readable. Identity transformation. The old you rushed to fill every silence, to answer every question completely, to make sure everyone understood exactly what you thought about everything. The old you was an open book, easy to read, simple to predict, quick to forget. The new you speaks strategically, reveals selectively, creates space for others to wonder, to project, to become invested in discovering what you're really thinking. The new you understands that the most powerful position in any conversation is the one where others need to know more about you than you need to know about them. Final power statement. This approach works because it taps into something fundamental about human psychology. We are infinitely more interested in people we cannot immediately categorize and dismiss. The person who can be completely understood in one conversation will rarely be sought out for a second. But the person who consistently suggests depths that haven't been explored becomes a recurring character in other people's mental narratives. You're not trying to be mysterious for its own sake. You're trying to be strategically engaging in a way that makes every interaction feel consequential, every conversation feel like it might reveal something significant, every exchange feel like it has stakes beyond just passing time. The ultimate victory isn't making people like you. It's making people unable to stop thinking about you long after the conversation ends. By the time they understand what you were really doing, you've already moved on to your next strategic interaction, leaving them wondering what else they missed, what other insights you have, and when they might get another chance to discover what you really think. Because the person who can never be fully known can never be fully dismissed. And in a world where everyone else is desperately trying to be understood, the person who masters the art of strategic mystery becomes absolutely unforgettable.